There is a secret that those that write and create consistently know. And the secret is that the most difficult part of writing or being creative is actually not the writing or being creative. The most difficult part is actually sitting down to write, sitting down to create something out of nothing. And what keeps us from sitting down is actually an enemy that we can't see. It's an enemy called resistance. And today I want to talk about 5 truths about resistance that you need to understand so that you can defeat it, get creative working, get on track. Steven Pressfield wrote a book called The War of Art. And if you are trying to be a writer, creative, maybe an entrepreneur, if you are trying to level up in any way, this book is going to open your eyes. And what he talks about in this book is that we all have 2 lives inside of us. There's the life that we live, and then there's the unlived life within us. And there's a gap between those 2 lives. And living in that gap is an enemy called resistance. That's what's standing between those 2 lives. And this is really important because resistance is active basically any time that you try to pursue that impact that we talk about on this channel, the impact that God wants to have in and through you. As you're trying to move towards that, resistance is actively working against you. It does not want you to move any closer to that. It does not want you to make any progress to better yourself, to better the world around you. And if you don't think that resistance is real, I love what Steven says in his book. He says, watch out, because resistance will bury you and you won't even know what happened until it's too late. But there is hope, because if we can learn to identify resistance, learn how to talk about it, understand how it works, then we can learn how to defeat it. Stay tuned to the end of this video where we're going to touch on that. But first, here are 5 truths about resistance that you need to know. The first truth is that resistance is invisible. You can't see it, you can't touch it, you can't taste it or hear it, but you can feel it. Steven calls it a repelling force. It is going to pull you away from that task that you need to be engaged in to move forward, whether that be writing, creating, publishing, starting something new, growing yourself. It's going to pull you away from that. It does this in multiple ways. It may use procrastination. It may use fear to try and scare you. The reality is, if it can keep you from sitting down and writing, from sitting down and creating, then it's winning. The second truth about resistance is that it is impersonal. It took me a minute to wrap my head around this one because it's so malevolent that it feels like it's coming after you specifically, but it's very consistent and it actually acts objectively, and it cannot be reasoned with. You can't negotiate with resistance. If it can keep you from doing its work, then it's winning, and it will do anything that it possibly can to keep you from doing that. When you don't do the work, when you actually give in to resistance, instant gratification, procrastination, whatever that looks like, when you give in and don't sit down, you actually feed it and it becomes stronger. It's universal. We're all facing this. We all face the same challenge. If we're trying to level up, anyone around you, if they're trying to level up, they're facing resistance. And the third truth is that resistance is insidious. It will tell you anything that it has to keep you from doing the important work, to keep you from doing the work that matters, to keep you from sitting down and writing and creating. It will tell you anything. It will lie. It will tell you you're not good enough, that you don't qualify, that the road ahead is too long and too far. You'll never measure up. I know in my own life, resistance is always telling me that I can do it later. I can write or prep or prepare these videos. I can do it later, which is hilarious because I have 3 kids and a full-time job and I love creating content. And where exactly is that supposed to happen in the timeline of taking care of family and being a husband and a father and all of these things? More time when it distracts and pulls in different directions, and its goal is to slow me down, but its end goal is not really just to slow me down. It wants to stop me. And I say that resistance is insidious because it really only has one goal. It wants you to die with that dream that God's given you. It wants you to die with that dream still inside you. Steven goes even a little further in his book. He says, resistance doesn't want to simply hurt you. It actually wants to kill you. The fourth truth is that resistance is a compass. You see, it always points in the exact same direction. Every time, it's always pointing away from the work that you know you should be doing, away from the opportunity, from the gift, from the impact. And if you know this, this is when we can start to take this and use it to our advantage. Because if we know that the pull, that gravitational pull away from the work that we're supposed to be doing is resistance at work, then we can lean into that and fight harder and push back the other way and say, well, now I know exactly what I'm supposed to be doing. Now I know exactly where I'm supposed to be headed. I did a video a while ago about about a book called Drift that talked about this idea of when you feel that pull, that's when you know you need to lean in. And you're going to feel that pull even stronger the more important the work is. The more important the call is in your life, you can lean in and know that it is pulling you in the exact opposite direction, the direction that you need to go. If you feel greater resistance, that should be a sign to you that you need to lean in and fight harder. And the fifth truth about resistance is that resistance can be beaten. This is absolutely the most important truth that you need to know today. Resistance can be beaten. Look around at all of the incredible works of art that we have. Look around at all of the amazing architecture that surrounds us. Listen to the amazing symphonies that have been composed over the years, the incredible music that you love to listen to. People have been defeating resistance since the beginning of time. And Stephen says in his book that even though defeating resistance often feels impossible, you have to remember that. You have to remember that people have been defeating resistance since the beginning of time. I can't imagine the resistance that Noah must have felt building the ark, or Nehemiah must have experienced when he was rebuilding the wall in Jerusalem. So how do you defeat it? You turn pro. That's what Stephen talks about in his book. That's what we're going to dive into and unpack in next week's video. Hang tight. I will see you then.